the first time when it was always India, maybe Eastern Europe. So I cannot speak anything ill about the founder because she did a really good job. Now, fast forward to today, and I actually went to see the space because Sama Source was originally a nonprofit, as you can imagine, working with refugees and kind of generally kind of areas where there's a lot of poverty, like the and also raising capital from VC in Africa at that time was almost impossible. I was one of the first and only people who would give capital to anyone in Africa when ventures back in the day. But anyway, she stood there as Sama Source and then tried to pivot the company, the organization, to a for-profit, hence Sama. And I got a chance to go and see one of these centers in Nairobi. I think it might be the same one. I think it is the same one. And this is where things start to get a bit dark, as you can imagine, right? I mean, first of all, I remember her saying, come at 7 p.m. Obviously, as a VC 24/7, but I never had a meeting at 7 p.m. I realized that it was the night shift I was going to see, handover from the day to night shift. So I saw the bus pick up the workers arrive, and they all go in, and they all in a cafeteria, and it was a pretty positive environment. It felt like a little campus, and these people are from the slums, the Kibera slums. Any of you here have been to Kibera in Nairobi, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, like it was really amazing to see these kids go from a slum, arrive in a bus in a nice workspace, and often get their first computer skills that have ever used, right? I mean, just think about that. I mean, and again, just think about myself. Like I'm someone who's very privileged to have managed to go around the world, and be connected to some great people. But to see a slum kid be able to have access to that computer for the first time and have a paying job and all those benefits was amazing. But as I walked around, I want to confirm a couple of things. When I was there, it was definitely not local content. I saw, college kid drunk photos, bikini shots. They had to kind of, for Facebook at least to try and moderate that. It was not necessarily culturally appropriate for Africa. I hope that's changed. I can't speak to obviously today, and maybe there's more content to moderate locally. So just wanted to correct that. I've seen that it wasn't. But then it wasn't just Facebook as a client, right? It's easy to kind of hit on Facebook too much on this. But they had other clients too. They had car companies. You can imagine which ones, right? Where they were doing AI training of for roads, and so you could spend a whole shift just looking at road photos and trees and sidewalks and correcting them. Or you could be on the shift where you're the Facebook client and that you're looking at moderating these images that are not culturally appropriate. So sorry, I just wanted to kind of make sure I set the facts straight as someone who's actually been to that center and knows the founder. Thanks.
Lovely additional context, as usual, Mopana. Thank you for that. Okay, well, in short,
Tyler,
hang on, Mopana. It seems like the tightrope that, the ethical, moral, humanish tightrope that at least I'm feel myself on with this issue, and I imagine others are in a similar boat, is should this kind of work be done there? What's your take on should, I mean, like
wait,
I'll just add one quick.
There's other work other than Facebook, lots of it, but the Facebook work is uniquely challenging, perhaps, and perhaps it should come with a lot of extra pay, and perhaps people should be very carefully screened to make sure that they can handle it and be done in a way to know that a lot of people won't be able to handle it. And anyway.
Yes, and wait, Tyler, I knew Layla also, and I think if Layla had lived, none of this would be happening because there'd be much more oversight into the kind of work and the kind of conditions. I think this is like the law of unintended consequences, and Layla got, I forgot, cancer or something like that and died. And so it's really a shame because it was such a fabulous company, and maybe Facebook exploited it.
I mean, hi, this is Ella. It's really hard for somebody to manage somebody else's vision when they
Susie here, because I have to leave in a minute. I just wanted to finish off the comment. I think
okay, go ahead,
we are
finish it, I'll
looking.
go.
Thank you. I think that it's very vital that we recognize when it comes to screening and monitoring social media, Facebook maybe one of the worst, but I think we can think of a few others. There's absolutely horrific content there, and we need human beings to sit there and look through it and sort it out and decide this is too bad, we cannot show this to anyone, but they have to see it. And we have to recognize that it's a whole new field where it should be not only screening the right people that are robust enough to deal with it, but also to create a framework around the job, just like a psychologist or a psychiatrist have a framework of people to support them and education that learns them how to deal with this. People are actually coming out from these jobs with post-traumatic stress, and post-traumatic stress, as we know by now, is very, very severe. So this is the Wild West right now, and there should be taken initiatives to deal with it, whether it's in Berlin or it's in Ethiopia. It doesn't matter. It's still the same deal. But of course, we shouldn't exploit a certain area because they have no choice. But that's just one part of the larger picture. So that's one for me, Sushi from Denmark, and thank you
I
very
think
much.
we just figured it out.
So,
I think,
Tyler, I have
yeah.
this point as
Oh,
well.
Aaron.
Al wanted to
Elle was
speak.
going next. Aaron, yeah.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Now, I just wanted to say, it's hard to embrace somebody's vision once they passed away. So I'm pretty sure whoever is managing it right now is probably doing the best that they can. And maybe Facebook is exploiting it, or maybe they're just giving them everything. And it's like, just like drinking from a hose. They're receiving so much content thinking they can handle it, but it needs to be done in a tiered sort of situation as if this was a network operating center. You have people that manage certain content based upon their skill level and, their background in handling that stuff. There needs to be thorough training in any of this stuff, because that's some of the things that I have to do with public safety and the police, where we thoroughly vet them to handle certain situations. And this, even though that these are not badged people or anything, no matter, they need to go through some type of training. You just can't take people off for lack of a better way to put it, off the street and just put them with light training and just expect them to be able to just moderate everything. It's not logical. So I don't want to say that, Facebook is exploiting them. I think Facebook was just like, oh, we're just giving them an opportunity, and they just stopped right there. And whoever's on the ground, they don't have that type of foresight to think like what the damage is to people when this happened, especially if you're seeing pictures of children or women or anything like that. I'm Ellen, I'm done.
Right, real
Yeah,
quick.
Elle, I think it was just a matter of she was trying to establish a contracting business, and whoever signed up as a client signed up as a client. And had she been around, her vision was definitely not like Facebook's. But on the other hand, she's been dead for, I'm going to say, 5 years. So I don't know the answer to this, but it's very tricky, as Tyler said,
Yes.
because it's both good and bad. The intentions were unbelievably good. You know who this was, Tyler?
Ooh.
Loic's girlfriend.
Oh, really? Oh my God! Now I know who. Well, I knew Gerald. I knew his former wife very well, and then this was the young lady who's like incredibly fit, and then she got cancer. Yeah.
That's her.
Oh my God.
Layla.
Oh my God. Yes, I know. Yes. Wow. Dark hair, long dark hair.
I think so.
Well,
yeah.
Well, I'm thinking. So are these people working directly for Facebook, or are they like a contract? It's like a contract service, because I really think that it has
Independent
to be.
contract.
Even with independent contract services, there's still like a middle person. So I think everything needs to go to that middle person, because I don't want, because it's easy to blame Facebook for everything because they are the big name, just like anyone else. You need to go for that in between person and then roll it back there. That's the only way you're going to see the change.
Yeah,
Well,
I
I
just
think it
remember
was
that
just
this
a
was not their only.
startup. It was a startup when Layla died, and I think Elle is right. It's difficult for someone to, remember when Chris died. It's like impossible for someone to embrace the founder's vision.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna add some more context as well. Like, yeah, for me at the time, Facebook wasn't the only client. It may have ended up being a bigger client, and a big focus as companies grow, and they, Facebook definitely grew a ton, obviously, in the last 5-6 years, and this has become a bigger problem for them. So I can imagine they outsourced more the moderation to places like Sama. And maybe as mentioned, like with Layla passing, the organization may have suffered, the leadership aspects that would have made them stay on point. And I do remember they were planning to open up. I was going to help her open up a computer lab, like similar to the ones in other parts of East Africa, in my mother's hometown of Tanga in Tanzania, and that was a government level deal, right? And I remember when she passed away, and when someone is not with us anymore, and you have to deal with some of people asking she's not responding, or the team that she's assigned me to is not doing a good job. I'm starting to see that happening in which never happened in the Tanzanian deal, because I think she wasn't there to kind of get it through. So and then I want to just ask the question, for those who are more ESG minded. I think one clear outcome of this kind of story and is how important ESG is going to be on the social and the labor side. We often focus ESG on the environmental, increasingly governance as well, like share structures and boards, etc., oversight. But I'm wondering if this sets up a lot of scrutiny for investors, scrutinizing companies on the social side, particularly on the labor. Obviously, in this case, it's going to be a bigger deal for tech companies, tech
Yeah,
firms.
I think that's true, especially since so much of what happened with Summersource was an inside Silicon Valley. Loic was everybody's friend type of deal.
Yeah, I just had a crazy thought, and it might be a terrible thought, but it might not be. So, and I would love, this is an opportunity with.
You're going to tell us your terrible thought, aren't you? You're just going to tell us and make us accomplices.
Here's what might be my terrible thought. This content is toxic, causes PTSD, and we know it does, right? And humans should not be subjected to it knowingly. Now, I mean, or if they are, they should be very well warned in advance that this is a likely outcome at a minimum, right? So that they go into it with full knowledge of that, and all that, and then with the right support or whatever. However, there is a not insignificant number of people that governments have decided they are on death row and are going to be terminated anyways in some manner of time. In what is obviously the makings of a Black Mirror episode to end all Black Mirror episodes, and one of the most dystopian episodes of a movie. Maybe this is a movie that needs to be made. Would people on death row who are going to be terminated by this have already been ruled that they're going to be terminated by the state. So their mental health trauma means nothing to the state, because we're going to kill it. But not only are we going to mentally traumatize you, we're actually going to kill you. We want you to die. We want you to die. We're going to kill you. So you might as well, here's something that you could actually do that would benefit society in the short term. You see where I'm going? So
yeah, but how good would their judgment be?
Fair enough.
As moderators.
Of course, that was the first thought that came to my mind as well.
They're going to be making a lot more friends from all those people they're trying to moderate.
It's a wild thought, and it's a very crazy tech dystopian concept of death row inmates doing the absolute most toxic job of society, which turns out to be the content moderation out of major social networks. But here we are in 2022, and I don't like the idea of young, normal, potential. God, what a sticky subject this one is. Jesus, it's really the garbage pit of the internet. It's what it's the toxic waste. It's the nuclear waste.
I would suggest extricating yourself, Tyler, before you get in more trouble.
Yeah, no.
Tyler's just like going down this rabbit hole for sure.
I know.
Feels like you're reversing into a hedge.
Move on.
Move on. Okay. I'm just
It's
trying to
not
think.
for AI.
How do
Can
you
we get back to
Yeah,
the article?
Nicholas
And
was just
I
mentioning it.
mean,
Tyler, I was
I
trying
guess,
to offer a thought for a long time on this
can we
topic.
just
go ahead, and
can we get
I can
back to the
offer a
article?
suggestion, but I could probably get you an answer because I deal with the City Watch for a lot of the cities, and they see a lot of stuff on camera. And I think Captain Hood is on here on Clubhouse, and he could probably talk to you about how his City Watch handles receiving, all these images they see on camera all the time. They call it the highlight reel, the one that I saw, but it's some crazy stuff they catch on camera. So I know they have
Th-
stuff set up for them.
There is
devil?
a simple
Oh, go
solution.
ahead, Nicholas.
The simple solution is that if people had to pay to post and they had a three strikes rule, for example, where there was a bounty for catching people, so people are self-selecting to catch people out, and if you have a root of trust in the identity of the poster, you can effectively police them because it's a sort of three strikes and you're out. And if your root of trust is moored in a real identity, even if you're not disclosing that identity, so you're not losing your sovereignty, but that way you can solve this problem. So um, either make there a hurdle to post so people don't post frivolously, or three strikes and you're out, and create a bounty system where essentially people can be incentivized to catch them out, and then they get banned for a period of time.
So, I'm going to defer to the wisdom.
Aaron wanted to say something, so.
Who was that, Aaron?
Yes, Tyler, thank you. I was trying to offer a solution. This kind of problem is not a new problem. Physicians who are psychiatrists, people who work in trauma-informed therapy, people who offer themselves to be subjected to this kind of a toxic experience. They no matter how much you inform them, that does not prepare the body and the mind for the reactions that are not in your control when you're subjected to such kind of traumatic experiences. And day in and day out, if continuously your body and mind and your vision is exposed to such insults, the responses in the body are totally out of control, and it causes not only PTSD but so many other problems. And the solution for this kind of work is, like in the field of psychiatry and psychology, is very vigorous training. These people who are not being trained, I see the humane part of providing the jobs to the communities who otherwise would not have any means to earn. But on the other hand, this kind of work requires tremendous um, self-control, self-regulation that can only be developed under rigorous training, chronological training. And even during those trainings, there are people who cannot withhold and withstand that training, and then they opt out of it. And people who cannot sometimes regulate themselves suffer from severe consequences. I know many of my physician friends who have lost their lives because they couldn't handle it. I know many VA patients who cannot handle this kind of exposure to trauma. So this is not something new. We just need to be very cautious in terms of the training programs that we need to develop before we expose anybody to this kind of gruesome experience. Because human body and the reactions are not controllable. Even if you know what you're going into, you don't know how your body is going to respond to. So I would suggest to have trauma informed psychologist kind of training for people like this.
Yes, this is the construction work of the internet, right? It helps everyone have a better time, but at the same time, you wouldn't give a power drill or even a jackhammer to someone that didn't know how to use it properly. And just in the times that we're in was more focused on mental health. Like maybe 60 years ago, we wouldn't have cared about this, but right now we understand the type of traumas people can go through just by watching a video or looking at something. And this is the type of work that is just that, right? You're doing this over and over again, and you're completely and repeatedly exposing yourself to trauma. So I second that thought that Aram had, but and at the same time, we do need to find a way to have humans not do this work. But in the meantime, there definitely needs to be an intermediary between the people that are doing this work and actually making sure that they're healthy and fit to do the work. And I don't really believe in the essence of people like this in this area, such as Nigeria, where it comes to even this company creating a sweatshop related incident, right? So, and that's not the greatest thing for me. I take that one to heart, but just to keep it to the journalism perspective, it's the article is well written and it gave you what you needed to know, and this is the type of conversation that needs to be happening around it.
Yeah, I wanted to add one other thing, just kind of broaden the context a little bit, just given the perspective of what I'm seeing more and more is important for investors looking at some of these innovative startups that are kind of having unique challenges around bringing work to, a remote area. I recently decided that I need to be careful investing in the mobility sector, particularly, sort of the Uber or the whatever 2.0, like for example, in Uganda, motorcycle taxis are very popular. They're probably like, 80% of the vehicles in downtown Kampala are motorcycles, and that's the best way to get around. And so you're seeing obviously the sort of, ride-hailing equivalents, motorcycle kind of similar to Gojek in Southeast Asia. You're seeing the rise of Safe Boda in East Africa and other companies like them helping riders basically get funded with their motorcycles. They're seeing more and more the financing of the bikes, which brings up an issue of like debt, because often you might have someone leaving a rural Uganda going into Kampala, the downtown, to get a first job, and the first job they land is maybe a motorcycle driver earning, and they often have to borrow to get that first bike, and there's a lot of startups helping do that layer. As you go, but the thing is, what I realize is the more I talk to the drivers and folks around, is that it's very hard to leave this sector. It could take you really a long time, right? Because I'm thinking, okay, fine, if you're sort of 18, 19, you come to the city, how long does it take you to pay off the debt and get out of that? Because I think most people agree with me here is that you don't want someone to be doing that for the rest of their life, just taking, because there's obviously the risk of accidents. Motorcycles, inevitably going to happen, right? So I'm just kind of giving you an insight about how this is going to be a pressing issue on the labor side, some of these marketplaces more and more, where you're having labor coming for the first time to the digital economy, and there's a stack there, often tied with debt, that can also hold back the progression of some of the talent in Africa. But at the same time, it is their first job, right? And there's millions of Africans who need this job, and so this is an important aspect for them to obviously get exposed to. Just wanted to kind of give that context.
Okay, next topic from the BBC, that the UK's tax authority seizes three.
Tyler, just before
Yes.
we do that, did you contact your friend to see if he's going to come from the Foo Fighters to see if he's going to come on and tell us?
Thank you for reminding me. Here's our exchange. Hold on 2 seconds here. I said, Messenger, Rami. Here's what I said. Where's Rami? There he is. Yesterday. I said, I messaged him on Twitter, you'll remember. And I said, he doesn't use Twitter, by the way. We always talk on Facebook Messenger. So he hit me up out of nowhere and said on Messenger, missing, because I'm in Thailand. He says, missing Thailand like mad during these COVID years. Got an email message from you through Twitter and can't figure out how to get back in there. So I'll say hi here. Hi, he says. Yes, after Super Bowl show. So he means we can follow up after the Super Bowl and talk about how it went. Regular or metaverse style, but you really need to see our horror movie, he says. So I guess the Foo Fighters have a horror movie that I wasn't aware of. Anyway, so and then the conversation kept going on from there. But let's try pinging him today. Let me get a link to the Twitter event here in the Twitter space, because that's going to be easier for him to join than Clubhouse. And now let me paste that into my little chat with Rami here in Facebook Messenger. The problem is one's on my phone, the other's on a laptop. Will it paste? It did. It worked. Okay.
Did you say he has no Twitter account? How can he join to speak if he has no Twitter account?
He does have a Twitter account.
Wait.
He just doesn't use it for messaging. He doesn't know how to do DMs in Twitter. He just does it to post content once in a while. We are talking live.
I think his views will be very interesting given how much trouble people had. I don't know if you had trouble logging in and getting on, but it was
I did. I gave up. I gave up like 5 minutes.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
Tyler, please ask him to raise his hand when he's there.
Okay, I just said we're talking here about the Super Bowl performance if you can join. So if you see, I'll know when, he just saw it. There he goes. So
it wasn't a Super Bowl performance, but it was
because
awesome.
it's Facebook Messenger, I can see that he just saw my message, which he just saw it. So let's see if he jumps into the Twitter space here. It'll be Rami Jaffe from the Foo Fighters. He may not, or he might. He's not typing anything, so that's maybe a good sign. So keep an eye out for Rami Jaffe to jump in the Twitter space and let me know, Cheryl or JT or Evan or. Okay, thanks.
So, hey, Tyler, what were you asking about the Super Bowl performance? Because I was there.
Where the friend of mine is one of the members of the Foo Fighters, and we wanted to get his perspective on what it was like to do the VR performance that they were doing.
Gotcha.
Well, I do know from Twitter Spaces, or at least Twitter threads, that it was a debacle in terms of getting into the actual experience. Many people had reported not being able to access it. I think so many people were trying to get in that somehow it was either a bug or something had occurred. But nevertheless, they had something very interesting implemented during at least this weekend. The first time we ever saw a portal that allowed you to jump from one application to another. Prior to this, you had to actually close the application and load another one. So in this case, Venues is the application that I'm referring to, Horizon Venues, where the actual concert was being held. And in order to go from Venues to Horizon Worlds, which is a whole different platform, you have to actually close a portal. But they had a portal to go through, but you couldn't go in reverse, which I think that would be coming soon in the next iteration. But the whole, I guess, issue of sharding is one that the industry has to somehow solve over time, because the amount of avatars or instances that you can have in one experience is very limited. And this is one of the major, I guess, friction points that John Carmack had alluded to with respects to metaverse experiences, and how there needs to be more, I guess, testing in the internal space before anyone can think about external sort of interoperable experiences at grand scale.
So he says,
what were you saying, Susan? Y'all spoke over Susan. She was talking. Suzanne, were you still talking?
One sec. I'm just chatting with him now because he says, not able to log in. I'm just waking up here and can't remember my Twitter password, he says. So I'm asking him if he generally has
Send him a link to Clubhouse.
He doesn't have a Clubhouse account, but he doesn't remember
his password.
Yeah. Any thoughts on the future?
But most of the time with those issues, I guess while he's fixing that, with those issues, when it comes to access, it's always because of the network traffic, and they never test how the sheer amount of traffic that they might potentially have, and how much bandwidth that's going to take up. You're supposed to do like a load testing and try to test the network to its maximum capacity to mitigate any eventuality, so that way you could have some type of redundancy in place. And they most definitely didn't do that, because I couldn't access anything.
It's interesting. There were 3 different experiments that went on yesterday. There was a Verizon experiment. I don't know if anyone went into the 360 portal during the halftime show, where you could effectively get into the stage, but just with a camera, with a 360 camera. That was Verizon did that, and of course Coinbase did the QR advert, which was, from a security perspective, is an incredibly difficult, incredibly bad security introduction. But I think those 3 or 4 events that happened yesterday were really interesting in terms of the direction of technology.
Kelly, maybe you can, audio chat on Messenger with your friends. You can.
I just asked you, the dinging you're hearing in the background is my chat with my buddy Rami, and I said, do you have any thoughts on the future of VR concerts? Because he plays in a band called the Foo Fighters, and they play a lot of concerts. And he says, I didn't see how it looked, but tried VR goggles, and it sure seems like it can mess up your perception once you take them off. Like, it's so trippy that regular 3D works, that it's so trippy that regular 3D world is lackluster. Okay, so that's his. I know what he's saying, but he says
He's saying that the Oculus experience is so realistic that a 3D experience is underwhelming. A regular 3D, so volumetric is something if you can get on.
Yeah, and then he adds, I'm all about making normal life as fun as possible. #old school, which it very much is. He's very much
a dino baby.
Yes. By the way, that's one of the next articles, this word dino baby that Dr. Fran, did you just shout that hashtag out?
I did. Well, I saw your title, but I had read the article too.
Yeah, there was an article coming up about, here it is, right here. And Alexandra's the one who found this one, and I'm sure others did as well from MSN, that IBM emails show millennial workers at IBM are discussing in emails how to force out older workers at IBM and derided them as dino babies who should be made an extinct species. IBM is being, and then Alexandra adds context to her tweet by saying IBM is being ageist because it's not getting enough millennials, and that's not fair. Tantrum because scared of being fuddy-duddies, etc. The average age of its board is 64. But that's a neologism, as language experts call them. A new word in the lexicon has been added, dino babies. There you go. So the next big topic is a whole bunch of fundraisings, as usual. Snapchat is testing mid-roll ads in stories of some U.S. creators ahead of a wider rollout, and will share revenue based on engagement and other metrics. And you know what? Did you hear that sound? Do you know what that is? Do you know why they're doing that? Do you pay close attention to tech news around the world so that you actually understand the full context of what's going on with that headline? What that means is, did you not notice when we met last week, I think it was Thursday, somebody can correct me, when YouTube announced that they were going to be monetizing what they call shorts, which is their version of TikTok. And I said, oh, wow, look at this. Here comes YouTube with their own solution for how to monetize short form, vertical, TikTok-like content for creators. And that's huge. That's massive. That's unbelievable. People can, you now no longer need to do horizontal edited content for YouTube to be a paid content creator. Remember that? You guys remember this whole point last week? Yes, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday last week. Well, Snapchat's not going to sit back and let that party gravy train, let YouTube make all of that cash. So Snapchat is testing ads in stories and going to split the money with the creators. Did you hear that sound? Wow. Holy shit. They're in the game. They want to be in that race. And now the pressure is going to be on TikTok. And now it's going to become a massive race to see who's going to pay more, where are content creators going to make the most money or have the most reach, and which one will matter more, reach or money. Will people stick with TikTok if they're told they're being seen by 1 million people when God knows how
Or,
many people
or,
they're actually being
It's
seen?
or
the
will
streaming wars all
or
over
will
again with Apple, Tidal, and Spotify, right? So it's streaming mixed with money. It's the exact same thing. That's my nephew right there. But yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's going to be subsidized. We talked about this from a macro perspective. You know, your TikTok are going to be able to subsidize, and people don't want to have the experience with ads. Just look how terrible YouTube is with all the ads bouncing in every 2 seconds, and Hulu, etc. That opens the door to TikTok, and that opens the door to mass indoctrination
So,
or perception augmentation.
amazing to see how quickly these cats respond to each other, because this is going to be a hot race here in 2022. The next one is a whole bunch of fun. The SEC proposes cybersecurity rules for investment funds and advisors, requiring them to report cyber attacks and major cybersecurity incidences within 48 hours. Newly unreleased court documents show IBM executives disparaging older employees as dino babies. We covered that. Foxconn says it will invest $118 million for a 40% stake in a joint venture with an Indian conglomerate. Okay. Oh, and I missed this one from the BBC, that the UK's HMRC tax authority seizes 3 NFTs in a $1.4 million pound fraud case involving 250 alleged fake companies, the first UK law enforcement agency to seize an NFT. The UK tax authority has seized 3 NFTs as part of a probe into a suspected VAT fraud involving 250 alleged fake companies. And the question is, will they sell those NFTs that they seize? In the ordinary world, yeah, go ahead.
The question is, was it wash trading, and is that the VAT fraud because they've sold it to themselves? I don't know if you saw recent research that there's a giant amount of people selling to themselves, creating fake
Yes.
entities, funding those fake entities, and then exchanging between those entities. And if, in fact, you were on every exchange, you were supposed to pay some sort of value-added tax, that may be the angle, the old Al Capone approach of getting people on tax. And the other thing to say is they're not really NFTs if they can be seized by some authority. It just shows that they're just pointers to a JPEG in a centralized repository.
Okay, the next one is, let's see, it's just a bunch of, NYC, a New York City-based Viam Robotics, which is still in stealth mode, raises $30 million by Tiger Global for standardized building blocks approach to robotics. Yep. South Africa-based Stitch, which enables businesses to build, optimize, and scale financial products using APIs, raises 21. The European Commission says it's planning to propose a bill for a digital euro in 2023. The European Central Bank expects to start working on a prototype at the end of 2023. Okay, and then there's one from the Wall Street Journal, how warehouse automation startups like Accelerate 360 and Adabotics, grocery services like Misfits, and delivery firms like Viho are transforming supply chains. Yeah, they're automating them, as I told you they would. And that's pretty much it. Now we get into the, what do we call it? The tweets. The tweets. So one of the tweets I have is from Professor Osif from The Observer, that in the headline, it's from The Guardian. I'm retweeting it now, and the headline says from The Guardian, new COVID strain could kill many more, warn scientists ahead of England restrictions. Demands grow for government science chiefs to reveal evidence backing move to lift last protective measures. This sounds disturbing. A future variant of COVID-19 could be much more dangerous and cause far higher numbers of death and cases of serious illness than Omicron, leading UK scientists have warned. As a result, many of them say that caution needs to be taken in lifting the last COVID restrictions in England, as Boris Johnson plans to do next week. At the same time, demands are growing for Chris Whitty and Patrick Vallance, the government's most senior advisors on COVID, to hold a press conference to reveal what evidence there was to back the decision to end all the pandemic restrictions. The dangers posed by accepting the widespread assumption that COVID-19 variants would continue to get milder in their impact was highlighted by epidemiologist Professor Mark Woolhouse of Edinburgh University. Quote, the Omicron variant did not come from the Delta variant. It came from a completely different part of the virus's family tree. And since we don't know where in the virus's family tree a new variant is going to come from, we cannot know how pathogenic it might be. It could be less pathogenic, but it could just as easily be more pathogenic. The point was backed by virologist Professor Lawrence Young at Warwick University. Quote, people seem to think that there has been a linear evolution of the virus from alpha to beta to delta to Omicron, but that is simply not the case. The idea that the virus variants will continue to get milder is wrong. A new one could turn out to be even more pathogenic than the Delta variant, for example. That's the whole point of that article, which is why it seems like people are
frighten everybody.
Yeah, well, now this could turn into a crazy debate, of course.
I mean, it's future casting. It's like doom forecasting, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, anyone who understands this understands that a recombination with MERS or SARS, which exist and which can recombine, as I understand it, with the spike so that it's extremely pervasive, would have, they have very high death rates, like 40% death rates. Something like that would be a horror show, and well, probably would destroy the global economy. But you can't think like that. You just have to get people to understand, that these are risks, and we need to be a bit more careful with each other so that we don't have these outbreaks.
I think, Tyler, the main reason why it's all being done, we all know it's political. Boris is fighting for his political life, and he has to give something to the voters that voted for Brexit and voted for the Conservative Party to win all those seats in the northern part of England.
Well, now
and those people have been badly affected because a lot of them aren't white-collar workers who can work from home, and they need to go out and work. So I think it's more of a political decision rather than a scientific decision.
Now, you just introduced something truly hair-raising, because this article teases a thought, and you introduced something that I had never considered, which is, regular tech newsers have heard me rant previously about the never-ending progress that's being made in lowering the cost of doing genetic engineering, which at some point will make it trivial for, no, it's almost trivial for.
It's 300,000 for a CRISPR.
Yeah, to do a smallpox variation with a 40% mortality rate, airborne. And I had always assumed that would be a very bad actor in the forms, a Death Day cult or, what have you, just really terrible.
Well, Tyler, I'm sure you saw the last James Bond film, right? Which Rami Malek plays that character.
Right, I'm told that is the plot of the next James Bond film, but I haven't seen it still.
Yeah.
But,
okay, so I won't. I won't go into too detail. But once you see it, you'll understand that if somebody has the means and the intent,
yes,
they can do this.
Right. Well, my point is it could be utilized by a more Machiavellian type character who would benefit politically or financially to do it.
You mean one who goes around poisoning people in Salisbury?
Poisoning people in what?
In the UK, in a place called Salisbury, someone from Russia, supposedly, poisoned two people sitting on a park bench. Happened in Arsenal football stadium with Litvinenko and Polonium-10. So your fears of a poisoner in chief are are at state level. But I think what you were about to say is with the combination of a CRISPR machine, MERS, SARS, and the coronavirus spike, it opens up a very cheap avenue for someone to do something doomsday style.
Yeah, I had never quite anticipated that it could be used as a political weapon by, in the similar way that maybe some sides of the aisle prefer that the pandemic continues, right? So anyway, it's a crazy thought. So the next tweet that I have is from Vinay, that India has created, I'm retweeting it now so you can see it from the Tech News Twitter account, that India has created a new tech unicorn every 5 days so far in 2022. Piyush Goyal revealed that India has created a unicorn every 5 days in 2022 so far, which would put them on track to do somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60 unicorns this year. That would be amazing. Because they did about 44 last year, which would mean 100 unicorns in 2 years. Truly unbelievable. The next one is from Tan, who is he on stage? He joined us recently. Is he back again today? There you are, Tan. This one,
I'm here.
From the Times UK. Wanabe president is everywhere thanks to his avatar. So this is about the South Korean candidate Yoon Suk-yeol uses AI for campaign speeches. One of the leading candidates to become South Korea's next president is canvassing using a deepfake avatar of himself in what he claims is the first use of AI in an election campaign. Yoon Suk-yeol of the Conservative People Power Party, what a great name for a political party, the PPP. You down with PPP? People Power Party. Oh.
See, you know me. It's got to be. Say, you know me.
The People Power Party. How could you not be backing the People Power Party? What a great name. He's of the People Power Party, and he's supplementing traditional speeches and rallies with the use of AI Yoon Suk-yeol, created by manipulating audio and video samples of his speech and movement to create an impressively convincing digitized image of the 61-year-old former prosecutor. Hello, I am AI Yoon Suk-yeol, the avatar said on a screen when it was presented to the South Korean media. Are you surprised because we look alike? Etc., etc. So he's delegating he's cloned himself digitally.
He's setting himself up for plausible deniability when his clone grabs someone by the undercarriage.
Oh, that's genius.
That reminds me of the Indian leader who had body doubles and other folks go around and canvas for him. So we're taking this to the next level.
Yeah. Funny. Yeah, you need an army of these things. So the next one is from where now? The tweets. Here we go.
But the music for his campaign will be good. So you've got OPP and you've got Shaggy, It Wasn't Me.
So Didi, the Uber of China, launched a layoff plan covering almost all of its employees with an overall reduction of about 20%. And we kind of saw this doomsday scenario coming for Didi. The government seems to be hell-bent on killing Didi. And Coinbase's bouncing QR code Super Bowl ad was so popular that it crashed Coinbase's website. I guess
so that was the fourth element, wasn't it? It was that you had the QR code, which is not good OPSEC. You had the crashing Foo Fighters. You had the Verizon, and you had the fact that all of the servers weren't able to hold up.
McDonald's has filed a trademark for a restaurant in the metaverse that will actually deliver food to your home. And they've also trademarked McMetaverse for obvious reasons.
They'll be serving nothing burgers there.
And JT found this one, that planning on getting an Apple headset, check your home insurance coverage. What's that one about, JT?
The article goes into how certain, a large amount of individuals have been, I guess, breaking things in their home using VR games. So there's some video there where someone breaks a lamp above their head. There's someone that sort of crashes into a wall, or tries to lean into an invisible wall and crashes into a physical wall backwards. And so there's a plethora of other videos where people are either breaking things or breaking their own bones. And there seems to be a business model here to take advantage of in terms of insuring your own personal items at home. So that's what the article goes into.
Okay. So the next one is, you have another one here that Apple VR could offer Memoji FaceTime share play experiences. The Apple VR headset, VR and AR headset could take advantage of Memojis to provide a great FaceTime experience, a report offers, with share play.
Yeah, the idea here is that when you have your Apple mixed reality headset or Apple AR glasses, you're going to be obviously FaceTiming people. But one of the biggest friction points is that you're not holding, obviously, a phone to your face. So they're going to need to bypass that. And the best way to do that is through avatars. And so they're able to, as Facebook does, Meta, I should say, be able to track your eyes and track your movement of your head. You're able to sort of take that data and transpose that onto an avatar. So if the other person on the other side is either has a phone or has an AR headset, I should say MR headset or AR glasses, they would be able to see the Memoji sort of reacting to your actual movement of your head. But this sort of expands a little bit more. What Apple's working on sort of long term is really utilizing the avatar system, the whole body, full body tracking. That's probably going to come down the road. It was outlined in one of their patents. But just to expand this a little bit further, the article does go into an application where this would be possible in actual virtual meetings, and there was an actual patent that described the similar application where you would be in a virtual meeting. So it introduced the aspect of a metaverse from a productivity standpoint and utilizing avatars within that ecosystem. So this definitely plays a factor into that realm. You'll probably need a more, I guess, business stylized kind of avatar, but it's a good way to solve a problem that is not available at the moment. And in the shared experiences, during WWDC, we saw sort of a first version of that, where they introduced a software update where you're able to share experiences, everything from watching content together on your phone or listening to music together, recommending music to one another. So the idea of being able to share an experience in augmented reality or in mixed reality with your friends is something that they could possibly leverage into the future.
Okay. So the next one that I have is from, on a similar topic. BB sends this one from the BBC. She did it again. The augmented reality device, it says how tech could spot when building work goes wrong. It'd make it easier to inspect a building site to notice when building works are deviating from the original plans and allow construction managers to decide the works or the plans need changing. The augmented reality device is able to highlight where construction has deviated from plans.
Yeah, I believe this is one of the most profitable area in the future, because you don't need to bring like a 10 centimeters thick book with you, so and you can get feedback to check how the sizes is real time. So yeah, I think this is one of the promising field for this VR AR.
Yeah. And the next one is also from BB. From Reuters, that Chinese company denies alleged IP infringement of ASML. And that's a follow-up of an article we had last week where ASML, the Dutch company, that is a critical link in the chain of semiconductors, was accusing a Chinese company of intellectual property theft and selling stuff, and now the Chinese company denies the alleged IP infringement of ASML. China's Dongfang Jinyuan Electronics which makes software for chip manufacturing procedures, has denied reports about alleged IP theft from Dutch company Asml. On an official social media account on Friday, the company said the, quote, recent appearance of a large number of reports related to our company in online media that are inconsistent with the facts.
So
Okay.
now it's a dogfight. Because no, the 东方晶圆 no, it's clearly it won't stop selling those equipment.
Yeah, no, of course not. The next is also from BV, that MIT engineers have created the impossible new material that is stronger than steel and as light as plastic. Oh, wow. The new substance is the result of a feat thought to be impossible, polymerizing a material in 2 dimensions. The new substance is the result of a feat thought to be impossible, polymerizing a material in 2 dimensions using a novel polymerization process from MIT. Stronger than steel and as light as plastic. That would be amazing. The next one, also from BB, that VR-related insurance claims increased by 31% last year. A lot of people are actually...
Let's understand as JT's about this one gives you these statistics.
It says a lot of people are accidentally smashing their TVs. And so they are filing insurance claims because there's going to be...
Yeah, originally you think it's about health, but eventually it's about the properties.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then the next is...
Because when they watch their soccer games, when they lost, they just throw things into the TV?
Perhaps, yeah.
Because if you are playing VR, you have those handles, so it's like you're waving and you walk around, so you bump into things, just like JD previously said. So if you okay, Amen.
No, BB, I was going to say I agree with what JT said. I think this is an excellent business model of insurance, because I think people will definitely start to mess up their homes as they get more active with the Oculus and doing these movements inside homes. And sometimes those homes are very decorated. So not everyone has the luxury of having like a very open space where you could just be with like 3 or 4 of your friends, and like they do in some of the public, there's one over here in Amsterdam that has it in North where you could go and play, and where you could put on headsets and like go in and like you could watch from above with a glass, and you watch what people do and you're like, wow, thank God you're not doing that at home.
But this is very strange because those who own house properties, right? Every one of us actually buy insurance that protect the furniture and the appliances too. So why is that so special?
Probably
It's
Cheryl, because
anyway.
Cheryl, probably it's because in the United States, under some insurance policies, and there's other people in the audience that may know insurance a little bit better, but I know under one of the policies I had, you know, if it's inflicted by you, or like if it's a theft or
you're liable in America.
Correct.
You're liable if someone has an accident in your home, which is the reason why you need to have a pool net in some places where you have to make sure no one can stray over to the pool, because if they fell in and drowned, you would be the party that would be sued.
Nicholas, but what happens if it's you that does it?
Well, then it's your fault. But I have an Oculus, and because we're involved in the metaverse, I want to give one reflection on something that was said by the previous person about the Apple glasses. And I think that we work with John Getter from the Matrix trilogy series on the special effects, and he made this very big insight, which is that it is the facial responses, it is the micro gestures, it's everything that is the small things that make it very believable. And I think that goes back to Rami's point about how powerful volumetric will be, which then ties into this, which is for sure true, because over Christmas time we had a range of people that came into the house and put on the Oculus and was sort of testing different things. And, from an 80-year-old uncle who was very disorientated, and we have an open area, but it really is fully immersive. And even if you're playing something like Beat Saber a number of times, people were hitting into other people. So it definitely is very engaging, and you do lose your sense of perception very quickly. but your eyes hurt terribly afterwards, I find.
Alrighty. Next tweet that I have here from BB. Google made a smart lamp that you'll probably never be able to buy. Only employees can get this smart light called the D light. It's reserved for employees only. Anything else you can say about this one, BB?
But why do they do this? I'm not sure if it happens in US, but I will say in Taiwan, in China, you will see it on like eBay or like Taobao tomorrow immediately. So I'm just curious why Google decide to make a employee only lamp.
Okay, here we go. Moving right along from Dr. Fran. That religion is moving to the metaverse. Worship in virtual reality is growing under quarantine. Sunday church service continues in the metaverse and growing. That's an interesting concept. The next article is also from Dr. Fran. Facebook has invited advertisers to its first big pitch in the metaverse. Facebook parent Meta is having its first gathering with ad executives since rebranding to focus on the metaverse. Well, let's see.
I hope they can fit all the people in the same place.
Intel says its new crypto chip is designed to be energy efficient. This one's from Thomas Tong from The Verge. Intel over the weekend, I think, or on Friday, I think May might know best, announced a new chip specifically for crypto mining, essentially, which would be massive if everybody could now get their hands on building little crypto miners. And
I can't believe it took that long for Intel to do that. I was like, I wonder how long the established players in the silicon market will get around to building a crypto chip. We see huge markups of GPU prices. So now that there's going to be a more specialized chip, maybe we'll get some relief for the people who actually want to use GPUs for graphics and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, Tyler, to the point about the graphics and that dovetail with that graphics card statement, that is in essence what, it looks like that article was trying to say as well, that they are developing that chip because of the fact that it needs to have the same, almost similar power as a graphic card, but really you now start jockeying for position on who's going to have those cards. Is it going to be the miners or is it going to be the artists, right? So now you imagine that you have competing forces and they're developing it. But Tyler, did you also notice that Jack Dorsey was right on top of like being the first one to use them? Did you read that part of it, that Jack Dorsey's aligned with?
It fits perfectly with what he wants to do, which is what everybody crypto mining, yeah?
Yeah, correct. And it's really important because remember he said he wants like his grandmother or someone to be able to do it so easily. And I think he's really evangelizing for that to be the case.
Well, he wants to build the software part and then Intel builds the chip. Somebody's got to make a very convenient consumer device like crypto. But in Jack Dorsey's case, of course, it will be a Bitcoin miner almost exclusively because he seems to be as Bitcoin maximalist as anyone can get, yeah?
I'm quite curious if you'll be...
Amy, two questions. Is it CPU or GPU based? And is it optimized for the Bitcoin algorithm? Or, the chip is only one side of the equation?
Yeah. I think one is CPU. Answer to the first one is CPU, if I'm not mistaken, remembering the article. And the second question, I believe it's Ethereum. But I think it's also that they're using it for cryptocurrency, but the article just tagged Ethereum, meaning it was just discussing it as the fact that so much traffic is going to Ethereum because of all the NFTs and stuff. So I think it just really was just identifying the chip because of the environmental component, right? And the fact that the gentleman who spoke before me, it is in fact an article. I think NVIDIA was mentioned in there as well. So I think the first element is that they want to find that chip that allows it to be more seamless and environmentally friendly. But clearly, Nicholas, whether it's going to be for Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, I don't have that answer. But I'm really curious to see where they do take this from an ESG perspective, because there's a huge element of ESG that is now coming up in many people's minds, and I would be curious to see as well, Tyler, and or Nicholas as well, if Jack Dorsey's going to be at Bitcoin Conference 2022 in April. That's one. And number two, I'm very curious to see if he's going to be on target to preview something there or to launch something by that time. Because he's been really somewhat quiet on Twitter, and that leads me to believe that he may be strategically working with his team in the background to maybe even present something at the April Bitcoin Conference. Just saying, if he's going
I
to be
think
attending.
there's two things that are worth saying about talking about in regard to this. One is that you can mine on the CPU now if you have the right algorithm, and that everybody has to acknowledge, and Satoshi did acknowledge that, which this was originally a CPU mine, Bitcoin was CPU mineable, but then as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you have more and more incentive, you have a natural incentive towards creating an ASIC. And an ASIC is a custom chip for solving that particular algorithm. So, and there is no algorithm that is truly resistant to ASIC development. So that's one thing. So it's a little bit of a red herring. The second thing is that there are CPU mineable protocols available today, but you need to understand that is a huge opportunity. So Jack is right to look for it, but he's probably, Intel is not necessarily the right place. It's about finding the right algorithm. And again, it needs to be owned off by and for the people.
It's funny
Yeah, and
because in all
sorry,
of
just to
this, I
add, the
wonder
ASIC
who
is
is
actually much more efficient at
Eric,
computing than
Eric,
the
hold on,
even
Eric.
the GPUs. So
Hold on, Eric, hang on. Michael,
That was Michael's on stage. What's up,
yeah,
Michael?
it's okay.
Hey, what's up, fam? Actually,
Yo,
you can go ahead and finish your point, brother.
go ahead, Eric, and then we'll go back to Michael. Thanks, Michael. Go ahead, Eric.
that was basically it, that the ASIC is just much more efficient. So compared to a GPU, it just makes much more sense. Although the algorithm could change, that's just one thing to note, that eventually an ASIC makes more sense economically and environmentally.
Take it away, Michael.
I totally forgot my point on it. But I'm happy to see you
I
guys.
bet it
Love
was
you
about
guys.
the Super Bowl halftime, Michael, wasn't it?
It actually was about the what I was wondering is who is looking out for the ethically for the Bitcoin miners and the conditions that they're mining in. I visited the Bitcoin mines off the coast of Africa over the weekend, and it is a lot of work getting those coins out of there,
It's crazy, isn't it?
and
I
it
just
really is.
so just a quick comment on this. The GPUs, the best NVIDIA GPU is about 1 mega hash per joule. So that's how much hashing you get per joule of energy you consume. The best, as Nicholas says, application-specific integrated circuits, the best dedicated miners made by like dodgy Chinese companies do about 11,000 mega hashes or 11 gigahashes per joule. So 11,000 times more efficient than a GPU. Intel is advertising itself as 1,000 times more efficient than a GPU. So it's for SHA-256. So it's sitting, 3 orders of magnitude better than a GPU, but about still an order of magnitude worse than the best existing dedicated miners. Just FYI, that's roughly where it seems to be sitting on the spectrum.
It gets really hot in those mines. I just hope they're getting lunch. Hey, happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Happy Valentine's Day, Michael.
They
Same
got
to
food
you,
delivery, Michael.
Michael.
The food
I
delivery
bet they
system.
got Subway delivery there
Are
too.
they Uber eating Subway into these mines?
I knew that was coming.
You can send
That's
them
fully
some. Send them some love.
Yeah.
Happy Valentine's Day to all of you. That
Happy
includes you,
Valentine's Day.
obviously.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
Just as a question, Tyler, I wonder how the situation in Ukraine-Russian border, which is obviously increasing energy prices, how's that going to impact these miners and their profitability?
Yeah.
Tyler, there was an article that one of my friends who's Ukrainian, we were having just a little chat over the weekend virtually, and I believe there's an article in the Ukrainian paper that's telling people to relax telling the media from the United States to relax on how they're reporting, that they're making people, they're really scaring people. And I don't mean to mock it, but it's, Tyler, what we've been talking about for 7, 8 months, almost a year now, because I believe your club's at an anniversary, isn't it, of a year? And it's interesting because in the news over there, they're reporting that the United States media is making things much, much bigger and much more drama-filled than actually is happening in the Ukraine.
Yeah, and it's intriguing that if you read up on it, you see the nuances that is actually at play here.
I met with someone
Bingo.
at an investor event, and she was from Ukraine. She just flew in from Kiev over the weekend, and she said it was awfully pleasant.
That's what we do, though. That's what we always do in America's. I used to harp on it and get really upset about how much we exaggerate and how big out of proportion we blow things and how we target things, and honestly, just how bad and shitty we are in terms of media. But I'm embracing it now, and I'm going to celebrate it from now on. We are so good at shitty media.
We're number one. Number one.
Also, media's in Denmark about the situation in Ukraine. The top most important researchers and those who are allowed to speak about it were interviewed a couple of days ago, and they are giving it a 50-50 chance of violent warlike conflict. So it's definitely not only the US who thinks that this is an extremely dangerous situation. Denmark has been calling home every Dane who is in Ukraine for the last 3 or 4 days with increasing urgency. Come home now before the airports close completely. Lufthansa and other airlines have closed down a couple of days ago. They're not flying to Ukraine anymore. So I think, no, maybe not only a US mass hysteria, but definitely a serious worry. And I think for me personally, there was the incident of military-like drones flying over critical infrastructure in Sweden a week or two ago. That sort of says that it is not only a laughing matter, but that was my perspective from Denmark. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great
I
point.
think
I
what
think
was
there's
most
actually a
shocking.
diplomat from the Ukrainian government who leaked something to the CNN. Now, how reputable or that is another thing. But they said that the media is exacerbating the issue, but there's already a lot of concern within the Ukraine. So having these kind of amped up conversations might be the thing that tips the balance and actually makes a conflict happen. So they're just concerned escalation through
Which of
media
these should I use
reporting,
for
and that's
Jay
a real
Anderson?
concern. 50-50 or 49-51 sort of thing.
Yeah, and
I think the
this is
really
Astrid,
troubling
Tyler.
thing,
I
really
just want to
troubling
add on that
thing.
because it's also stressing people who are living, Ukrainians who are living in this country and have been here for a long, long time, and their kids have born and grown up here. And I was listening to an 11-year-old, and she was clearly stressed out with all the media reporting and the way things were playing up. So maybe a notch or two down would be not a bad thing because it's going to affect people's mental health
We
as
say a
well.
notch or we say a notch or two down, but Putin did come out publicly and
Wow.
say that while we
Oh.
might not be overwhelmed, in terms of on the ground, or we might well be overwhelmed in terms of on the ground power. We are one of the world's largest nuclear powers, and you don't want to test me. I don't think, yes, the media may be accused of ratcheting, but Putin directly threatened a nuclear response to any action to stop him walking into a sovereign country. So I do think there is something that we need to realize is that at what point does the world, decide to stand up, and who do we stand up for, and why do we stand up for them? I think I don't know everything about this or anything
But no,
particularly about the situation there, other than Putin warned not to invite them into NATO, and that was sort of restricting a sovereign nation's abilities anyway. Like why should they have to listen to him? I just wonder if anyone has any thoughts about Putin threatening nuclear war, and how far the ratchet goes, and whether you should be intimidated by thugs who go around flouting international laws like poisoning people in other people's countries.
But he
And
really
I
has a
would,
massive number of troops on the Ukraine border, so no one's making this up. I mean, it's not made up. I mean, they're really all these troops around the Ukrainian border that he keeps adding to. It's not made up. I mean,
No,
The Russians test the
it's
airspace every day for the European nations, so that this is that they are
yeah, but
constantly
it's a much
pushing and
larger number. It's a
testing.
much larger number than he's ever had before, and so
Oh
and
no,
the
agreed,
reason,
agreed.
yeah.
yeah. I wanted to put like just the international politics perspective. I'm not really the biggest politics fan, so this is gonna be like a one-off. But just on this, for the sake of understanding the nuances of the situation, Putin also said that he didn't want to actually have a war. Like the last thing that Putin actually wants to do is have a war, because, or even go into Ukraine soil, because creating an occupation of that scale will like just damage Russia like irrevocably, and at the same time Ukraine as well. And the last thing and more so than that, it's a NATO versus Russia problem, right? So it's the collective like people within NATO versus Putin in quotes, and sometimes some people in Russia and Ukraine also, right? So Ukraine is actually split by the east and the west of what their allegiances are to Russia and what their allegiances are to Ukraine also. And with just the speeches and the conferences between, the British ambassador and the just everything that's been going on with the Russian ministers and all of these things, the people that are coming to the table to speak, it seems like there's not a massive understanding of why we are in the place that we are, with how NATO keeps trying to expand west eastward, and Putin not wanting to have that. He done so much work to make sure that NATO didn't expand into eastward. I think it was 2007 or something like that. Forgive me if I got the year wrong. But the point is, there's this constant military expansion by a Cold War organization that stayed together when the Soviet Union disbanded. So there's a lot at play here, and it's been going on for the past
It,
40
it's
years. So
it's
you
not.
can't. It's not necessarily just a who was that? Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say this is acid. It's not just about it. What the main issue here is, Ukraine is a sovereign state, and no big country should impose itself on Ukraine. I totally support that 110%. But we are not going to go to war with a nuclear power where we risk us being nuked. I just don't see that happening. So the question is, what are we going to do? We're not going to put our soldiers. I don't think any British citizen will agree for our government to send troops to Ukraine for fighting the Russians, and that's not going to happen. And if so, I think that's where we need to decide where is our red line and where is Russia's red line.
Yeah, something like 130,000
Well,
troops
Putin's made clear his red line.
stationed around the Ukraine, Russian soldiers or private military corporations, as they seem to be also using as well. So there's definitely a concerning trend that it may be a larger number than most allied nations are willing to even fight against. So it might just be something like, hey, look, boom, there it is. There's Crimea. It's gone. So
Eric,
I expect a similar kind of decisive, swift action.
Eric, your microphone sounds kind of loud and unclear to a degree. Clinton's got his hand up. Before I do, I get the impression that Putin's move of surrounding Ukraine, as he's done with 100,000 troops, has a parallels to a poker move known as the all-in, kind of where one player puts all of their chips up in a bold move to show that they're not bluffing, and it requires the other person.
I don't know. Maybe he's pot
Say
committed.
again.
Maybe he's not all in yet, but he is certainly pot committed. He's committed troops to
Yes,
the pot.
and
It's not a great analogy because in poker you can't take the chips back, but he could take the troops back. But anyway,
Doesn't this remind you of the famous incident of the Cuban Missile Crisis, right?
I'm not
I
sure.
would
I wasn't there.
I
No,
would
but
caution people to
Tyler, I think
possibly
you've got
listen
that's a good
to.
analogy because uh, Putin's troops are in Russia, so they can move around anywhere they want. But it's costing us money. I just saw that the Germans have just given 150 million to Ukraine, so it's all causing all kinds of stress levels in the West, and Russia is just sitting there. And it's going to move its troops around in its own jurisdiction, and we're getting all stressed out. The stress is self-inflicted, and if you ask the Ukrainian people, they want to be in Ukraine. They want to be run by Ukrainians, and they're not getting as worked up as we are.
That's not holistically true because there's a lot of Russian citizens in like still citizenship holders within Ukraine just as well, and there's a lot of consensuses that have been done over the past 6 maybe to 8 years about what Ukrainians feel about Russia, and like I said earlier, it's pretty much divided. So it's and the last thing that we want really and this is not really me saying this is Mearsheimer saying this is Russia and NATO side by side and splitting Ukraine in half. That is the last thing that we want. So the main thing is when we're saying sovereignty, there was a Russian ally within in office for Ukraine the last time, and this time you have more of a European centered parliament there. So it all depends on who's in office and what they particularly want to do. But this is generally a really political topic, and it's entrenched in the history of the Cold War. And I thought that was an apt example because I don't believe that America would take nicely to Russia and Mexico aligning, or even Canada and Russia aligning, and Russia having troops within or a military base within Canada. That won't go over well. So we can say sovereign nations. However, this is an egging on of sorts when it comes down to how you're placing yourself politically. And and there is I forgot what the particular accords were, where no one's allowed to ally with an enemy in quote state. So there is that as well for America in place, but there is nothing went in accordance to the Europeans and Russia and people occupying former Soviet states.
Okay. Next topic or next tweet, I should.
Can I just jump in there if that's all right?
Oh yeah, sorry, Mr. Clinton. Go ahead.
Yeah. Clinton DeVoe. I contribute to the Ottawa Hill Times in Canada, as well as Troy Media newspapers and magazines across the country. I think the Ukraine issue is a lot deeper than what many of us have talked about here for a couple of reasons. I mean, the first one is that for me, this isn't an East versus West. This isn't capitalism versus socialism. It's not liberal versus conservative. It's not Democrat versus Republican. I view this as an issue of a democracy defending itself from an authoritarian regime, from authoritarianism. And I do think that the West, and that includes, all of Europe, as well as North America and significant parts of Asia, responsibility to do a couple of things. I mean, or a combination of things. So either, supply military equipment or money to Ukraine, or to put troops on the ground. Of those three, because Ukraine is a sovereign state. It's a sovereign country. It's a budding democracy. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the people of Ukraine decide. And if we turn our backs on Ukraine, will we also turn our backs on Poland? Or will we look the other way if it's Sweden or Finland?
Or Taiwan?
Will we look the other way when China invades Taiwan? Will we look the other way as China continues to incur in sovereign Indian territory on the line of actual control? So I do think that there's an imperative to stand up and to defend working democracies. And the reasons for that is because if we look at everything that flows from democracy, we have functioning legal systems and court systems that function from democracy. Human rights generally flow from democratic countries. And the other important thing to remember, democratic countries, generally speaking, don't wage war against other democratic nations. And, I think history may look back if we turn our backs on Ukraine and may ask us, why did we not do anything? So I'll just place myself on mute, and thanks for letting me speak about that.
Sure.
I would like
Thank
to
you.
chime in very briefly on this as well. Putin said quite a lot of years ago, when talking about the former USSR and what he thought of the constellation with satellite nations that were not part of Russia. And he said at that point that, well, from his perspective, Russia had made a huge mistake in letting go of Ukraine and the Baltic countries and, hold your horses, Finland. They are all part of what the country that Russia should be. And that was his word. And I think this is still his intention. So I can definitely second the worry that Ukraine is not one part. Now they have taken the half island of Kremlin, I can't pronounce the name right now, but they take the part of
Crimea.
Ukraine. And what they have done during the USSR time is to place a lot of Russians, for example, in the Baltic countries. So they are now split, and same happened with Ukraine. It didn't happen in Finland because they fought and paid a high price during the Second World War to be independent. But Finland was originally very split and is now very, very anti-Russian, even though they had very close business connections with Russia and formerly with the USSR. So I think definitely this is testing ground for a much larger picture. And thank you for chiming in with that perspective. Susie from Denmark, thank you.
Thanks, Susie.
And
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I think that Tyler started to touch on the psychological aspect of this. Putin's a strong man. So how does he get himself out of this if he even wanted to, without appearing weak? And that's the problem, is that we have to figure out an exit for him that allows him to save face. Done.
By strong, you mean Machiavellian to the nth degree. Yeah.
Yes. A KGB.
He's a mafia boss. Let's face it, he's a mafia boss, and he's been doing things and he's been getting away with it. And like your poker analogy, he just keeps on going in and in and in, and everyone keeps on backing away because no one wants a confrontation, because everybody knows that confronting him is confronting a strongman who is so vain that you have to give him an out. Otherwise, you don't know whether he will go all in or not. And then the question is, if you're not going, if the NATO alliance is not going to, and its friends in democracy are not going to defend small democracies from strongmen, you have two strongmen that are very powerful. You have Xi and you have Putin, and they have just signed an alliance. It's not it's not a full alliance, but was clearly a signal that there is something else going on, and we know that they're also focusing on the dollar hegemony through their currencies. So this is a giant move.
Will we then could this potentially not be Putin setting the stage for his friend Trump to return, where Trump's going to stand up even before elected and say, Putin, back the fuck up, and then he steps down a week before election night?
Well,
Uh,
that
I
would be
would.
dramatic.
There's no
Like
for
flyover now.
every international relations person that I speak to and someone that does these types of politics in general. Um, you shouldn't really put much weight on the Russia and China alliance as of yet, right? Because we don't necessarily know what's going to happen, and much as there's military might and economic might, they're literally just right there together. So more than anything, if they wanted to create a trade union or whatever it is, and China obviously has the Silk Belt Road, but the reality stands is that there's no military means for what that we're seeing right now. So I don't think we should really put those two together, or at least that is what with the people that I've conferred with, and just being in
I
London and
disagree.
knowing this. Excuse me.
I disagree.
You're breaking up. Sorry, I didn't hear that.
I was just saying that I disagree with you. I think you have to look at what people are doing, and I think that Tyler has made an incredible point that Donald Trump could certainly have, if he's smart, words and look like the statesman and effectively shoe himself into a seat alongside him, which would lead to an erosion of democracy, in my opinion.
I don't
We
know
went down
what
this road.
part of what I said you particularly disagreed with, but I
I
said
disagreed with the bit where you said that we shouldn't look into the relations between Russia
no.
and China. I
I
think we
said we
have to. We
shouldn't
should.
put much weight on it. I didn't say we shouldn't look into it, and
No, I
that's
mean,
not
I'm just
really.
saying I think it's worth looking at.
Of course, everything is worth looking at, right? When it comes to international relations. However, when we're talking about these are two separate incidents, right? This it's not necessarily a military means. It's
There's
um,
nothing that's
Yeah, I
separate.
actually want to say at
it's
this point, I
they
disagree as well.
technically are though.
I think that we should be examining it in a much deeper detail. Speaking as a Canadian and seeing what's happening in my country in the last 3 weeks has been horrific. We have watched border crossing points between Canada and the United States, a half dozen of them that have been blockaded. Our capital city has been occupied, and there is multiple reports that show significant money has actually flowed from the United States, which was transferred over from Europe via Bitcoin. And I would argue that the disruption that is currently going on in Canada was done with the express purpose of attempting to have that spill over into the United States. And to circle back to Tyler's point, and I don't want to make this overly political, but unfortunately, some of the individuals that are behind the chaos that's in Canada have publicly said the types of things that Tyler just described. That they want to see some sort of a strange nationalist, kind of almost authoritarian relationship with a Republican, with a Trump-style Republican president, not necessarily Republican president, but a Trump-style Republican president. And those very same people have expressed this idea that there should be a relationship with Moscow, because from their perspective, Russia is a Christian nation. And, for those of you that aren't aware of what's happening in Canada, it ties directly into this very discussion that we're having. And, it's been very scary at
100%
times.
agree with you.
It's
If I
amazing.
can squeeze in
Sorry, go
really
ahead.
quickly. I was just going to say it's really interesting when you step back and look at the entire chessboard. And I always say that, I'm Chinese, my background, like my family's in China as well. One thing that I will say, they do plan for the long term. They are extremely strategic. And if you look at where everything's placed right now, this year, US elections are coming back up. There's going to be a lot of focus and, a little bit of drama. There's drama in Canada right now. A lot of people are talking about the oil pipeline between Russia and Europe. There's just a lot of things tied together. And to be honest,
chaos is the best time to strike, because when people that would oppose you are too busy dealing with their own stuff, and you've got two sides too. I do think if Russia and China are going to do something, it's really scary to think, but if they were to do it, you should do it when the chaos is the most hot. And imagine if they both made moves at the same time while everybody's dealing with their stuff. It's kind of like, oh my god, which one do you even address first? So yeah, the chessboard is interesting. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. America could take on Russia. America could take on China, but both of them at once, that would definitely be a challenge. But hearing that Russia is a Christian nation, for me, sounds kind of funny because how is it that a bunch of communists pulled like a 180 and now they've kind of galvanized this level of support? It's a very interesting play on a political level.
Well, I think if you look at Eastern Europe and Central Europe, it's the former communists now are hardline nationalists, stroke capitalists. They just simply switch their uniforms to retain power. And I would argue that Russia isn't a communist country anymore. It's an oligarchy led by people who are very close to the government.
Yeah, I mean, I
Agents of the
And
government. Let's
and
face
I
it.
would say it isn't the only country. There are a lot of authoritarian countries around the world. I lived in a country in the Middle East where even my elevator in my building was hooked up to the police. The street lamps had microphones in, and this is a country that is all over social media and everybody promotes it as a place to go on holiday. So we, the West, do deal with authoritarian states. We do support them, and we do overlook when they when they carry out human right abuses. It's an old playbook. It's done. It's just that our publics don't know that this is what our governments do when they don't tell us about it.
That's exactly the point, right? It's we're so beyond this, is that the people of the country, the majority of the country, not the extremists on both extremes. So we've got this polarization that's happened because of our perceptions are controlled by media, not just old media, social media. We saw the exploit in 2014 with the Brexit, 13-14. We saw the exploit that was taken on by a nation state. So anyone who's not joining these dots is just not paying attention or is willfully ignorant. So everything is linked. The fact that we're going through a high volatility experience because of the breakdown of the supply chain, which is causing inflation pressures, which is threatening the dollar's stability, is something that is remarkably important to the next election. And if we don't pay attention to the fact that all of these actions that cause instability create pricing risk, and all of that risk is to the advantage of those who would like to destabilize the status quo. So at a meta level, I think it would be wrong to say that the Russian people are against the West. It's that they are not able to express their agency because they don't have a democracy. They have an autocracy. And it's the same in other parts of the world that would ally with them. They're run by a tiny group of people that don't represent the vast majority. And even if they do think that they represent the vast majority are not getting access to information. So they are falling prey to propaganda that radicalizes them. And so, that's the real problem that we've got. But this is just, that
I just want
chessboard
to say
is a
I
great
agree
analogy.
with everything he
Than
just said, every single point, and I think it means that we're in a lot of trouble.
Okay.
But isn't there something to be said about how the fact? I'm sorry. Can I jump in here? This is Pat on Clubhouse. Just wanted to say that yes, a lot of what you've all been saying has been very true and accurate. But one of the things that we might need to remember is that actually each human being may not be like right or left, and actually we tend to see positives in some of the rightist way of doing things and some of the leftist way of doing things, and that maybe takes away some of our agency in a sense that we are then susceptible to manipulation of propaganda or PR or social media or whatever it is, because there seems to be some sort of lobbying movement going within the far right spectrum that over the years, long before Brexit, I think, I'm sure, but certainly for my own self, just before Brexit, it came into full perspective because it seemed that there was a lot of manipulation going on into our government circles at the time, which was a coalition and then conservative government in the UK, whereby the rightist lobbying, whatever you want to call it, of people like Steve Bannon and his associates and all that were pushing into the conservative upper echelons to convince them that this was right. And if you think about lobbying from the rightist or the leftist point of view, at the end of the day, it boils down to money. And I think the world has sort of come around to the idea of seeing the benefits of money. Even the average person in China or any of the authoritarian kind of countries, we value this idea of having more money, having more prestige, having more whatever, and we fall for all that. But the governments are using it to their advantage, and for some reason, the electorate are voting in the conservative, far right, whatever you want to call them, governments, and here we are. It's this sort of downward spiral. And heaven knows how we're going to stop it, but it is very scary and very dangerous. And just voting people out doesn't provide a solution because there's nobody to vote in. I mean, who is picking up the cudgels of this kind of movement? Let's get a unified world system. Let's get a more balanced view,
The
authoritarian
decentralized
versus
world is. The
capitalization.
decentralized world is. That's what we're trying to do.
Absolutely, but who is going to lead it? Who is going to be the charismatic person? Because probably we need some such to actually move it forward. Who? It's too disparate at the moment. It's too separated now. How are we going to do that?
Okay. Well, kind of related. The next article is from Jeff G. that I'm retweeting now, and it comes to us from Wired. And the headline says YouTube's Olympics highlights are riddled with propaganda. YouTube's search engine is funneling sports fans into watching political content about China. Sports fans tuned in to watch the Beijing Winter Olympics on YouTube are instead being served propaganda videos. An analysis of YouTube search results by Wired found that people who typed Beijing 2022, Olympics, or Olympics 2022 are shown pro-China and anti-China propaganda videos in the top results. 5 of the most prominent propaganda videos, which often appear above actual Olympics highlights, have amassed almost 900,000 views. 2 anti-China videos showing up in search results were published by a group called the BL, the Beauty of Life, which Facebook previously linked to Falun Gong, a Chinese spiritual movement that has been banned by the Chinese Communist Party in 1999 and has protested against the regime ever since. They jostled for views, or competed for views, with pro-China videos posted by Western YouTubers whose work has previously been promoted by China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Similar search results were visible in the US, Canada, and the UK. Wired also found signs that viewing numbers for pro-China videos were being artificially boosted through the use of fake news websites. This flurry of propaganda videos was first spotted earlier this month by John Scott Railton, a researcher at the University of Toronto's research laboratory called Citizen Lab. On February 5th, he found that after he had watched skating and curling videos, YouTube automatically played a video by a pro-China YouTube account. Quote, I found myself on a slippery slide from skating and curling, no pun intended, slippery slide with curling, into increasingly targeted propaganda, he says. These videos no longer appeared in autoplay on February 11 when Wired conducted its analysis, but the way similar videos still dominate YouTube search results suggest the platform is at risk of letting such campaigns hijack the Olympics. YouTube spokesperson says the vast majority of videos showing up in search results were posted by trusted sources like NBC Sports and blah, blah, blah. A common theme of the pro-Beijing propaganda videos is the 2019 decision by US-born skier Ellen Gu to compete for China at the Winter Olympics. So the next, I know we're shocked and amazed, but that's how the sausage is made, or the influence, as Nicholas might say. The next one comes to us from Ajini Kumar, who joins us in the audience most days, and found this tweet that more than 500,000 Afghan migrants are heading for Europe. And Jeannie says, just like you said. Indeed, I did say that. And now there's articles tracking 500,000 Afghan migrants heading for Europe. And then the next one, it says, the 500,000 migrants displaced by political turmoil arising from the Afghan takeover and a famine in Afghanistan this winter, which we covered, is in addition to the 2.6 million existing Afghan refugees around the world. Of those, around 2.2 million are in Iran and Pakistan, with another 3.5 million people displaced within Afghanistan itself. One area of concern is the potential weaponization of Afghan refugees by Belarus, which is said to be actively importing migrants and encouraging them to cross into the EU via Poland and Lithuania. The Afghan situation is going to cause serious problems over the coming months if we do not get a grip now. A big part of the problem is Schengen, open borders, etc. Okay. The next is from Thomas Tong, that reusable plastic bottles shown to release hundreds of chemicals. Researchers at University of Copenhagen have found several hundred different chemical substances in tap water stored in reusable plastic bottles. Several of these substances are potentially harmful to human health. There is a need for better regulation and manufacturing standards for manufacturers, according to the chemist behind the study. Have you ever experienced the strange taste of water after it has been in a reusable plastic bottle for a while? It appears that there is a solid yet worrying reason for this. Two chemists from the University of Copenhagen have studied which chemical substances are released into liquids by popular types of soft plastic reusable bottles. The results were quite a surprise. We were taken aback by the large amount of chemical substances we found in the water after 24 hours in the bottles. There were hundreds of substances in the water, including substances never before found in plastic, as well as substances that are potentially harmful to health. Yeah, that's a problem. The next is from Vice, from PT Yoder, from Vice. Hackers just leaked the names of 92,000 Freedom Convoy donors. The Christian crowdfunding site called Give, Send, Go helped raise $8.7 million for the anti-vax Freedom Convoy in Canada and was hacked on Sunday night. And so the donors, 92,000 of them, have been leaked. And Thomas Tong found this one, that plants can now regenerate faster when they've been injured. With a chemical tweak, researchers were able to double the time that a plant regrew roots.
Tyler, sorry, just
Yes, sir.
I know you just skimmed over that story there.
Mhm.
The not GoFundMe. What is it called again? Sorry.
I just tweeted it. Here we go. It was called the Give, Send, Go.
Yeah, I look. I'm actually furious about this. So that was the one I was thinking of. So just to give your anyone on, some $11 million was raised, which doesn't sound like a lot of money if you're in the United States, where you have a population of some, 330 million people. But in Canada, where we have a population of 38 million people, $11 million is a sizable chunk of money. And what I find extremely worrisome is that 53% of the monies that were raised through that fund came from the United States. So this is money where Americans have made, or some Americans, I should say, some Americans have decided that they want to directly interfere with the internal domestic policies of Canada through funding a destabilization campaign. And I touched on that earlier. So right now, the largest, and for your listeners that don't know this, the largest trade and commerce infrastructure in all of North America is the Ambassador Bridge, which connects Windsor, Ontario, Canada, with Detroit, Michigan. And that particular border crossing, every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, there is over $400 million worth of goods that go back and forth across that border. And that border has been shut down for 8 days by what is essentially an occupying force on the Canadian side. The border between the state of Washington and British Columbia also shut down. The border between Manitoba and Minnesota, and countless other border crossings. This has all occurred and is all being funded through this group, through this website. And Canadian banking authorities have actually frozen those assets. So when someone takes a cryptocurrency and then tries to turn that cryptocurrency into legitimate, currency that the public at large uses, Canadian banks have frozen all of those assets. And this is incredibly worrisome. Just to circle back to that other topic when we were talking about Europe and what's occurring in Russia and Ukraine and all of this. So this all ties into that. So, 53% of this money is coming from American pockets who have decided that they are unhappy with the political direction that Canadians and Canada has democratically chosen to do. So this is a huge problem, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but online tools to transfer monies in this manner, there needs to be much stronger regulations around this. Because what's next? Are we gonna fund a campaign to fully remove a democratically elected government? So, anyways, I'll just place myself on mute. Thank you.
I think you have to be conscious that the technology is now there, that you can't stop this. There are privacy currencies, they're going to get bigger. And I think there will be much laxer rules around the digital yuan and the other CBDCs that will become the attack vector for the dollar hegemony, which is what has created the democratic background radiation, let's call it, and the power of the dollar and the power of the economics that is the US, unfortunately means that we're going to have to figure out better ways of us as people getting along with each other, because the nation state is being weakened every day, and people's idea of democracy is under threat.
Technology.
But hold on a moment. Just sorry. Just look. I don't disagree that people need to find a better way to get along with each other. But this is ridiculous when citizens in a foreign country are directly interfering.
Understood, but you can't stop
with
it.
The
That's
democratic
your
process
you don't.
of
I'm
another
agreeing
nation.
with you.
This is not
I'm agreeing.
getting along with
I'm
each other.
agreeing with you.
This is this is criminal.
I'm agreeing with you 100%. I'm just saying, standing there and I think you're pointing it out. At least people can see it now. You're pointing out the invisible hand, right? And that's a revelation. And for most people, they're not aware of this in all these things, and it's been going on forever. But the issue is that the means and states who have an interest in allowing for that to happen, in order to destabilize the power of the dollar, which is what sits behind this engine of democracy. That's the soft diplomacy that you export to the world, right, is coming under giant pressure. So I'm just saying you are right, but we have to understand that we need to be able to go over the top of this with technology. That's what we need to evolve. That's how we solve this problem. The only way I can see of solving this problem.
There's a uniquely consistent characteristic of technology in the broader context, that it cares not about governments or geographies or borders, and analyzed in a really broad context, like from the moon perspective, almost seems to have a momentum against it, where Bitcoin essentially, like the internet itself, like It unifies people across the border. It dissolves boundaries of all kinds, geographic, temporal, time, space, and whatnot. And yet, in doing so, at the same time, kind of chips away at the kind of man-made concepts of uh, of a border. Which animals don't respect borders, nor do they have to. They don't. Animals don't have to go through immigration. I don't know if you've noticed that the birds don't get stopped at immigration, but nor do deer.
Well, no, animals are regulated, Tyler. You can't bring certain animals across the border.
But they can bring themselves across borders, and they do every day. And they go across continents.
Tyler, there was a case of actually pigeon being arrested in India because they accused it of being
There you go.
a spy for Pakistan.
So, as much as governments would love to regulate nature, nature's preeminent, and all of the borders on the planet will all disappear at some point, long before the planet does. So the technology operates on that same kind of dimension where Bitcoin cares not about borders fundamentally. There's nothing in the code that respects borders of any kind. And in doing so, technologies like the internet and Bitcoin and et cetera, play into a we are one unified thing and challenge these man-made mental concepts of
Well, you know, Tyler, sorry to interrupt you. The whole concept of these nation states didn't exist until about
right.
200 years ago, after the conference and agreement of Westphalia. Before, you know, if you look at Italy, just even 150 years ago, it was actually city-states. Most of the Arab world and Africa wasn't those diagrams, the maps you see with straight lines, organized by European colonial. You know, people moved across whenever they needed to move for food and resources. It's only in the last 10 years passports exist.
There's still some territories on the planet that are still very debatable, like Kurdistan or what's the Palestine, and I mean, there's still a whole lot of debate of where the Google has a hell of a job trying to placate both sides of the Indian Pakistan border, for example. So it's anyway. So the next article is a really interesting one that I just found, that frontline workers find stress relief viewing nature in VR headsets. A team of researchers from Ohio University Heritage College of Osteopathic Medicine found that people can relieve stress by viewing nature scenes using VR headsets. The group has published their research in the open access journal PLOS1, noting that prior research has shown that people experience lower heart rates and blood pressure and reductions in the production of cortisol, a stress hormone, when exposed to nature. The researchers wondered if that might be the case for simulated nature settings. I gotta say, that's a fucking fantastic idea for a study, to see if the effects are kind of objective or...
Really, Tyler?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you assume that if you could, get people's heart rates to go up, you could get it to go down just
No,
by
but to
corollary?
me, because I have seen studies out of Japan. In Japan, there's a concept called, to translate, it's kind of like nature bathing, and it's a relatively widely understood concept where you need to go into nature and absorb it, and it has some kind of healing effect on you, and this kind of fundamental.
Zen.
We call it forest bathing in the U.S., Tyler, and there's been tons of
Right.
articles
Well,
about
the
it.
question is that subjective or objective? Meaning, would that happen if you were blindfolded, for example?
But you can still listen to river
Right.
flows.
Yeah, and you can still bend. I know.
Yeah, and it's also the what do they call it? The giving off of all of the plants, the
Right.
air and
Well,
everything.
it's known that plants respond positively to
Oxygen.
humans, and that study's been done by every junior high school student in America since the 70s. So wouldn't the opposite be true, that humans also benefit in the surrounding of plants? And then the question is, do they benefit in the surroundings of plastic plants? Hence, that also has been studied many times. And then the question is, of course, we could get some benefits by wearing a VR headset. But the question is, relative to being there in reality, what would the marginal differences be? I think would be that would be super interesting to find out.
It'd be so interesting how much you could trick your body as I'm
Right.
in Canada sitting with a happy light. For people I don't know what a happy light is, I'm trying to trick my body that I'm getting sunlight.
Yeah,
So
every Scandinavian knows that concept intimately. So
There is actually an electric field surrounding trees. So if you sit under a tree and lean against the trunk, you'll be affected by that by molecular level, and that's a part of the science about forest bathing.
if you want to take that idea to the nth degree and do a few grams of psilocybin and then hug the tree and then put the crown of your head against the tree, you're in for a really fun trip. You're in for
I've actually done
Well,
that, and
Tyler,
I really appreciate you said
if
that,
you
Tyler.
really
Thank you.
and Tyler, I'm formerly known as
yeah,
the tree hugger. So
if
here we
you
go.
really
Just make sure it's not a
yeah,
durian tree.
if you really want to question everything you've ever thought was reality, go ahead and just follow those 3 simple steps. Just a few grams of psilocybin, hug the tree, put the chakra, the crown of your forehead against the tree as you hug the tree, and then just send me a DM and let me know what happens. So the next one is from Thomas Tong, that scientists take another important step to solve the mystery of Alzheimer's. Could this be the breakthrough that led to Alzheimer treatment and actually works? There's, I got to say, a surprising amount of articles that come out on this topic of cures and prescriptions and treatments on the horizon for Alzheimer's. And the next is from Jeff G. Taiwan experts warn that Chinese drones may be relaying information back to Chinese servers. Yeah, and yeah, that's what the Taiwanese experts are now warning, that Chinese drones. Experts recommend Taiwanese government issue more regulations against Chinese-made drones. And last but not least, from BB, from the South China Morning Post, Bored Ape Yacht Club has been copied in China. China's Bored Wukong, accused of copying Bored Ape Yacht Club, which is obvious to anyone who's ever seen China's Bored Wukong. They look like obvious knockoffs. Bored
Yeah, it's
Bored
the Monkey King speaking
Bored
here.
Wukong's creator denies the accusations, naturally, invoking examples of celebrities who look alike. Yes, hey, some celebrities look alike, or they're not copying each other. Great defense. That's genius defense right there.
But they could, you know,
Maybe
if Bored Ape is truly a decentralized, a cryptographically verifiable thing that the community believes is of value, the Bored Ape Yacht Club should, you know, not care two hoots
Fair
about it.
enough. It's a good test of the.
But ironically, in China, you cannot sell and buy NFTs in China. So, but I suggest you look at the NFTs of this Wukong, the Monkey Kings herself. You judge by
Alrighty,
yourself.
we'll leave it there, and we will meet again tomorrow. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful Valentine's Day wherever you happen to be. And thank you for joining.
Sounds like a wow wow.
everybody.
Thank you.
Alexandra has a room now.
Thank
I've already
you.
pinned it on
Oh,
top,
thank
so
you,
please click
sis.
on it if you're interested in the blockchain related room. Alexandra.
Ta-da.
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.